Okay, so you want to own a food truck. Get a vehicle, cook your food, park somewhere busy, and watch the money come in. No expensive restaurant lease, no huge staff, just you, your recipes, and the open road. That's the version people see on social media. Long lines, sold out boards by 1 in the afternoon. Owners who look like they worked a 3-hour shift and then called it a day. The food truck is the shortcut, the low-risk entry into the restaurant business. The dream that doesn't require $1 million build-out. Here's what nobody shows you. The owner you're watching worked from 6 in the morning. They were at a commercial kitchen 2 hours before the truck opened, prepping food they'll never get paid directly for. They're going to spend tonight cleaning a vehicle that the health department will inspect again next month. And at the end of a good month, a genuinely good month, they might take home somewhere between $3,000 and $7,000 before taxes. That's the real version. And understanding why it looks so different from the social media version is worth your time, especially if you're thinking about doing this yourself. The first number people search is how much a food truck costs. And there's a real answer to that. A used truck, something already fitted with a kitchen, already inspected, already wrapped, runs between $30,000 and $80,000. Sounds manageable. That's less than a new car. But here's the first trap. A used truck is cheap for a reason. The kitchen equipment inside is worn. The generator is probably undersized. The exhaust hood might not meet current fire codes in the city where you plan to operate. You'll find this out during your first health inspection, which you won't pass. And then you'll spend somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000 retrofitting a truck you bought to save money. A brand new custom build is a different story. You're looking at $75,000 to $175,000. That gets you a properly sized generator, a commercial exhaust hood with a built-in fire suppression system, a plumbing setup that meets health code, and refrigeration units that actually hold temperature. You get warranties. You get financing options from banks who'll give you 5 to 10 years at 4 to 12% interest. Most serious operators end up somewhere in between. They buy a used truck with a solid engine powertrain, then retrofit the kitchen from scratch. That path usually lands around $80,000 to $120,000 once you add everything up. And everything includes more than you think. The commercial fire suppression system alone, the OnSol system that auto-triggers if your fryer ignites, costs between $5,000 and $12,000 to install. The 3-compartment sink, fresh water tank, gray water tank, and hot water heater together run $2,000 to $5,000. The exterior wrap, the menu boards, the LED lighting, another $2,500 to $5,000. The point of sale system with its hardware, card reader, seat printer, and cellular router adds another $500 to $1,500. Add it all up. A realistic all-in number to launch a properly equipped, code-compliant food truck in a first-tier American city like New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago is between $100,000 and $150,000. That's before you've bought a single ingredient. Before you cook a single meal for a paying customer, you're going to interact with several different government agencies. And each of them charges fees, and requires inspections, and renews annually. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce actually tracked this. In highly regulated cities, first-year regulatory compliance costs average $28,276. That number covers business registration, food handler certifications, fire department permits, health permits, and parking authorizations. But what it doesn't fully capture is the time cost. The weeks you spend waiting for inspections that get rescheduled, the revisions to your commissary agreement, the back and forth with the health department about whether your gray water tank is large enough. In New York City, the situation is stranger than that. The city caps the number of full-year food truck permits that can operate citywide. The waiting list is decades long. Not years, decades. So what operators actually do is rent permits from people who've been on the list since the 1990s and have no intention of running a truck themselves. Those rented permits carry a significant additional monthly cost on top of everything else. Los Angeles has its own version. The county health department requires detailed truck construction standards. Materials, dimensions, equipment placement, and operators must log every visit to their commissary kitchen to prove compliance. Miss a log entry during an inspection and you risk suspension. Here's the thing about all of this paperwork, it never stops. Every permit renews. Every certification has an expiration date. Every city health department has the right to inspect your vehicle unannounced. The average food truck operator in a major American city spends somewhere between $600 and $1,500 per month just on regulatory compliance. Permits, health fees, commissary fees, and legal filings after the first year. That's before fuel, before food, before a single employee. This one surprises almost everyone. In nearly every major American and British city, food trucks are not allowed to operate as standalone kitchens. You are legally required to have a commissary. A commissary is a licensed, inspected, commercial kitchen that serves as your home base. You prep your food there every morning, you store your bulk inventory there, you dump your gray water there, you pick up fresh water there, you clean your equipment there at the end of every night, you also pay rent there. The commissary rent in major cities runs between $800 and $2,000 per month, depending on how much space and what services are included. That's a fixed cost. Rain or shine, busy month or dead month. The commissary bill arrives regardless. If you thought a food truck meant freedom from rent, the commissary is the thing that disabuses you of that idea permanently. And the commissary creates its own schedule. You can't show up whenever you feel like it. Most commissary kitchens operate on reserved time blocks. You book your 2 or 3 hours of morning prep time weeks in advance. If you're late, you're cutting into your own prep time. If the kitchen is double booked, you wait. And every hour you spend waiting in a commissary kitchen instead of prepping is an hour you're not ready when the lunch rush begins. This is where a lot of people make an error that costs them money every single day without them realizing it. The instinct is to build a big menu. More options means more customers. More variety means more appeal. And on paper, that logic seems reasonable. In practice, every item you add to a food truck menu creates a cascading set of problems. Each new menu item requires its own ingredients, its own storage space, its own prep time at the commissary, and its own assembly steps during service. A menu with 12 items sounds appealing to a customer browsing it. But it means your line worker has 12 different tasks to know, 12 different assembly sequences to execute correctly under time pressure, and a kitchen with 12 different ingredients that all need to be at the right temperature at the right time. Orders take longer to assemble. Inventory is harder to forecast. Food that doesn't sell spoils. The waste comes directly out of your margin. The most successful food trucks run on 4 to 6 core items. That constraint is not a limitation, it's a financial decision. A smaller menu means faster ticket times, which means more customers served per hour. It means tighter inventory control, which means less spoilage. And it means your kitchen line can be organized so that every step flows in sequence, from the hot prep station to the assembly station to the packaging area, without workers crossing paths or reaching over each other. The other menu decision that directly affects profitability is the balance between expensive ingredients and cheap ones. A top-quality beef brisket sandwich with hand-cut fries is a beautiful product. It's also built around ingredients where the raw food cost runs between 35 and 45% of the sale price. That's before packaging, before labor, before fees. A menu built entirely on proteins like that will struggle to achieve overall margins. The trucks that manage their cost best always pair high-cost protein anchor items with high-margin sides. French fries, rice, drinks, where the raw ingredient cost is 8 to 18% of the sale price. The sides subsidize the star of the menu. That balance is the financial architecture of a well-run truck. Now let's talk about operating costs, because this is where the mental model most people carry completely falls apart. People imagine that once the truck is bought and the permits are paid, the expenses are mostly just the food. That is not even close to accurate. Fuel. Your truck is a commercial vehicle, a step van, or a large chassis vehicle weighing several tons when fully loaded. It gets somewhere between 8 and 12 miles per gallon. You're also running a generator, 8 to 12 kilowatts of power, burning diesel or gasoline for 6 to 8 hours every service day. Combined vehicle and generator fuel costs run between $400 and $1,200 per month, depending on route distance and service hours. Add liquid propane gas for your cooking equipment. Another $200 to $500 per month. Insurance. A food truck carries at least 3 types of mandatory coverage. Commercial auto liability for when you're driving the vehicle, $1,500 to $3,500 per year. General commercial liability for customer injuries or food safety claims, another $1,000 to $2,000 per year. And equipment insurance covering your onboard kitchen against theft, fire, or transit damage, $800 to $1,500 per year. Combined, you're paying $275 to $600 per month before you've done anything maintenance. Commercial vehicles wear down faster than personal vehicles because they're heavier and worked harder. Oil changes, tire replacements, brake jobs. The generator needs a full oil and filter service every 100 to 150 operating hours. Budget $300 to $800 per month for preventive maintenance alone. And that's when nothing breaks. When something breaks, a transmission, a generator alternator, a refrigeration compressor, you're looking at $3,000 to $7,000 out of pocket in a single week. That's not a projection. That's a documented repair cost range that eliminates weeks of profit in one event, point-of-sale subscriptions, cellular data plans, inventory tracking software. Another $150 to $350 per month. Now add it all together. Before you've paid yourself a single dollar, before you've bought a single ingredient, before you've paid your commissary rent or your permit fees, the fixed monthly overhead of simply keeping a food truck operational and legal in an American city runs between $3,500 and $6,500 per month. Every single month. If you're finding this breakdown eye-opening, hit subscribe and drop a like. It helps more people find videos like this one. Let's get very precise about what actually happens when a customer pays you $14 for a meal, because this is the number that matters more than any other. $14. That's the ticket price. But the city takes its sales tax first. In most American cities, that's around 8%, or $1.12. You didn't earn that. You collected it for the government. So you're actually starting with $12.88. Now subtract your food cost. A well-run truck targets what's called a cost of goods sold, the raw ingredient cost, of between 28 and 33% of the net sale. At 30%, that's $3.86. Now you're at $9.02 packaging. The box, the bag, the napkins, the sauce cups, the plastic fork, that's another 60 to 70 cents per order. Now $8.32 card processing fees. Square, Toast, Clover, they all charge roughly 2.9% plus 10 cents per transaction. On a $14 ticket, that's 47 cents. $7.85 left. And then labor. Even if you're cooking it yourself, every hour you spend on the truck has a cost. That's time you're not spending on anything else. If you have an employee at $18 an hour, the actual fully burdened cost once you factor in employer payroll taxes and workers' compensation is closer to $22 per hour. Spread across the orders that employee helps fulfill in a shift, the labor allocation per order runs between $2 and $2.50. What's left? Around $5.35 per ticket. That's your contribution margin. That's what's left to pay every single one of your fixed monthly costs. If your monthly overhead is $5,000, and we just established it's at least that, you need to sell 935 meals every single month just to break even. That's before you've taken $1 home. That's 31 meals every single operating day. 6 days a week, margin is not wide. Every inefficiency in that number compounds into a real problem over time. Here's why the operational details matter so much. A food truck in an urban setting doesn't earn its money evenly across the day. In downtown office districts, near universities, or in business parks, somewhere between 60 and 70% of daily street revenue happens in a 90-minute window, roughly 11:45 in the morning to 1:15 in the afternoon. That window is your entire business day. Everything before it was preparation. Everything after it is cleanup. During that window, order throughput is the only variable you can control. And the math on throughput is unforgiving. If the average order takes you 60 seconds to process and complete, you can serve 60 customers per hour or 90 over 90 minutes. At $14 per ticket, that's $1,260 in revenue. If a slow cashier or a complicated menu item extends the average ticket time to 90 seconds, you're now serving 40 customers per hour, 60 over the window. That's $840. Same truck, same location, same day. $420 less in revenue because of 30 extra seconds per order. That's not a hypothetical. That's the arithmetic of a food truck service window. 30 seconds per ticket, multiplied by a 90-minute rush, is the difference between a profitable day and a break-even day. Restaurants have walls. Food trucks have weather. A heavy rain event reduces street walk-up traffic by 70 to 90%. That's not an estimate, that's a consistent behavioral pattern in every major North American and European city with significant food truck presence. People don't stand in line in the rain for lunch. Extreme heat does something different. When outdoor temperatures exceed 95 degrees Fahrenheit, common in summer months across most of the southern and central United States, two things happen simultaneously. Walk-up traffic drops by 40 to 60% because people don't want to stand outside. And your kitchen, which is already running at high temperatures, starts pushing the ambient air inside the truck past 110 degrees. Your refrigeration equipment works harder, consumes more power, and risks failure. Your staff, working in that confined space over a hot griddle, faces real heat exhaustion risk, and then there's winter. In northern cities, Chicago, New York, Boston, Toronto, anywhere in the United Kingdom, food trucks experience a 40 to 60% drop in street revenue between November and March. The foot traffic simply isn't there. This is why any serious food truck operator either pivots hard to indoor catering during winter months or maintains a working capital reserve built up during peak summer trading. The operators who don't plan for this get caught in January with fixed overhead and no revenue cushion. The fixed costs don't hibernate. The insurance premium arrives in January. The commissary rent arrives in January. The loan payment on the truck arrives in January. The weather decides your revenue. You decide your costs. That asymmetry is the structural challenge of this business. Roy Choi is probably the most famous food truck success story in American history. He launched Kogi Barbecue in Los Angeles in 2008 with one truck, a Korean short rib taco, and a Twitter account. Within months, lines were stretching around the block. Time magazine called Kogi one of the best restaurants in America. He's credited, legitimately, with helping launch the modern gourmet food truck movement, but Choi's success with Kogi required something that most food truck owners don't have. A concept so distinctive it generated its own media coverage, operating in a city with the right combination of dense urban clusters and car culture, at a moment when social media was new enough that being early to Twitter was itself a competitive advantage. What Choi built wasn't a template, it was an exception. And even then, the expansion into more trucks, restaurants, a hotel concept required years of reinvested capital, strategic partnerships, and a level of operational discipline that most individual operators simply cannot sustain alone. The more instructive story might be the thousands of operators who came after Kogi, inspired by the vision of lines around the block, who discovered that in their city, on their street, On a Tuesday in October with 40% cloud cover and a competing truck parked 2 blocks away, the line never materialized. Not because their food was bad, because the arithmetic of the business doesn't guarantee traffic. It only processes it efficiently when traffic arrives on its own. At some point, a successful food truck operator starts thinking about the next truck. Double the trucks, double the revenue. The logic seems clean. It isn't. A single truck owner-operator controls every variable. They cook the food, they drive the vehicle, they handle the money, they know exactly what's happening every minute of every service. When you add a second truck, you need a manager for one of them. A good shift manager in a first-tier city earns between $15 and $22 per hour. You need someone to manage inventory across 2 vehicles. You need a commissary setup that can accommodate double the prep volume. You need to coordinate 2 separate parking locations and 2 separate permit authorizations in whatever neighborhoods you're targeting. The gross revenue doubles. The management complexity does not double. It multiplies. And management complexity, when it isn't handled correctly, translates directly into inconsistent food quality, which translates directly into lost repeat customers, which translates directly into declining revenue, while your fixed costs have increased. The food truck operators who successfully scale almost universally do so through a different model. They use the truck not as the end goal, but as the proof of concept. They validate the menu, build the customer base, and then pivot into a commissary kitchen that supplies multiple catering contracts. A brick-and-mortar restaurant that generates consistent daily revenue, regardless of weather. A packaged product that sells in retail stores. The truck was the testing ground, not the destination. There's one more revenue channel that sounds like the answer to every problem the street creates, and it's worth being honest about: events. Festivals, concerts, sporting events, the kind of crowds that make a $100 street day look embarrassing. A major music festival in an American city can generate $5,000 to $20,000 in gross revenue in a single weekend. That number is real. What's also real is the fee structure around it. Large events charge vendors a combination of a flat entry fee, anywhere from $500 to $3,000, and a revenue share. That revenue share is typically 15 to 30% of your gross sales. On a $10,000 event weekend, with a 20% revenue share, you owe $2,000 to the event organizer before you've accounted for a single other cost, and then there's the inventory risk. Events require you to purchase inventory in advance based on an estimate of how many customers will come through. If the event gets rained out on Saturday, which happens at outdoor festivals with surprising frequency, you've already bought the food, paid the entry fee, and potentially paid a non-refundable deposit. You're not selling much, but the cost already happened. Corporate catering is the opposite end of that spectrum, and the most financially stable channel available to a mobile food operator. A corporate lunch for a company office, pre-agreed menu, pre-agreed headcount, prepaid deposit, removes almost every variable. You know exactly how much food to buy. You know exactly how much revenue you'll earn. There's no weather risk because it's indoors. There's no event fee. The net profit margin on a well-structured corporate catering contract regularly reaches 20 to 35%. Operators who build a reliable book of catering clients, even 2 or 3 regular corporate clients who order every other week, create a financial floor that the street alone can never provide. Let's put real numbers on what this business looks like when it goes well and when it goes wrong. The optimistic scenario. You bought a used truck, retrofitted it well, and spent $90,000 all in. You financed $70,000 at 7% over 5 years. That's a monthly payment of $1,386. You're in a mid-sized American city with a good downtown lunch market. You operate 5 days a week, pick up 2 catering contracts per month, and do 1 weekend event per month between May and September. On a good month, you're doing $35,000 in gross revenue. Your food costs run 30%, that's $10,500. Labor, 1 part-time employee plus your own implied wage, costs you $9,500. Commissary, permits, fuel, insurance, maintenance, card fees, subscriptions, another $7,000. Loan payment, $1,386. Total costs, $28,386. Net profit, $6,614. Annualized over 12 months, that's $79,000. But realistically, you're having several average months and several bad months, which brings that annual take-home number closer to $45,000 to $60,000. The realistic scenario, it's January. Your city has been rainy for 2 weeks. The corporate client who gave you a catering contract last month pushed it to March. Your generator needs a $2,400 repair. Revenue for the month drops to $18,000. Your food and labor costs are somewhat lower, but your fixed costs aren't. Commissary, insurance, loan payment, fuel, those arrive regardless. You end that month down around $800, with the repair bill still sitting on your credit card. The gap between those 2 months is $1,500 of net income or negative $800 of net loss, a swing of $2,300 in a single month. That gap is the food truck business. You don't get to choose which month you live in. You manage costs, optimize throughput, and diversify your revenue channels, and then the weather decides. The average food truck in America generates $346,000 in annual gross revenue, according to industry data. That sounds impressive until you apply the margins. At a net profit margin of 6 to 9%, which is the industry average, that $346,000 becomes somewhere between $20,760 and $31,140 in annual net profit. That's the number after costs. That's what's left. The operators who take home between $50,000 and $85,000 per year, and they exist, are the ones who've minimized their debt load, built a strong catering book, control their food costs with obsessive discipline, and work the truck themselves rather than paying someone else to do it. They're essentially exchanging 60-plus hour work weeks for income that, when you divide it by hours worked, comes out to somewhere around $15 to $25 per hour. That's not a criticism. It's the arithmetic of the business model. A food truck is not a passive investment. It is a physical labor business with a small margin, significant volatility, and an ownership experience that more closely resembles a physically demanding job than a financial asset. If you want to go deeper into the numbers and build your own financial model before making any decisions, there's a detailed business guide in the description and the first pinned comment. It walks through everything in this video step by step. Grab it and run your own numbers. Here's the honest answer. Some food trucks generate impressive profits. Some owners build careers and real equity out of a single vehicle. But the ones who do share a set of characteristics that have almost nothing to do with the quality of their food. They picked a concept with high margin, fast service items, not a menu that takes 3 minutes per ticket to assemble. They chose locations through research, not intuition. They built a catering pipeline before they needed it, not after revenue dried up. They maintained a working capital reserve equivalent to at least 3 months of fixed overhead. They treated maintenance like a subscription, not an emergency. And they were honest with themselves about the hours, not just the lunch rush hours, but the 6 a.m. commissary hours, the late night cleaning hours, the weekend permit renewal hours. The operators who fail share a different set of characteristics. They bought too much truck on too much debt. They built menus that looked beautiful and cooked slowly. They picked spots based on what felt busy, not what the foot traffic data showed. They skipped the generator oil change in November and paid for a new one in January. And they ran out of cash reserves before they reached the point where the business could support itself. The food truck is not a shortcut. It is a complete business, compressed into 18 feet of metal and rubber and propane lines, operating within a 2-hour revenue window, against the backdrop of whatever the weather decides to do that day. The ones who understand that going in are the ones who survive long enough to actually make it work. If you found this video useful, please like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Every single video on this channel takes this same approach. Real numbers, real mechanics, no shortcuts. Thanks for watching.